Hey, thank you, Glenn, and good afternoon, everybody. Nate Kent, you heard my counterpart Jordan introduce Connor's group as we started going through really an introduction to how we look at supply chain. So we're a professional services organization that focuses on helping supply chains become more efficient. I feel like this presentation, this topic is a nice progression of what Jordan was talking about and how we really set the foundation with people and process, and then we also work with our partners in Legion Technology to incorporate technology after we have set that foundation. And so as you start to thinking about the warehouse, the work that we do around engineered labor standards, around getting consistency across the workforce, once we're able to realize that consistency, we can start to work with Legion, their technology, and offer supervisors and managers a means to be able to get an understanding of how many people they need, how they should be positioned within the warehouse, and really start making a lot more of those decisions up front, earlier, and more accurately. And so with that, I'll introduce Scott Hall from Legion Technology.
Oops, went too quick. Nice to meet everybody. Before I get started, though, I just want to say thank you to Nate, thank you to Scott, thank you to Walt, thank you to everybody at Netlogistik that invited us this time. We're new to the scene, so I can't wait to show you what we do. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Legion, and just like Nate said, to kind of go through some of the things that hopefully you haven't seen before. So let's get started. Legion was founded 9 years ago with the mission statement that we want to turn hourly jobs into good jobs. And that's really important for us, right? So we started in our roots are more of a retail side, because in the store you have retail hourly employees, right? So if you think about scheduling, there's always been a push and pull, push and pull between creating the most efficient schedule possible and meeting the needs of the employee, right? And part of that founding thesis is you don't have to have one without the other. You don't have to just have a really efficient schedule and have employees that are not happy, or really happy employees with a totally inefficient schedule. If we created something that was intelligent, automated, employee-centric, we can accomplish both at the same time. To do that, though, you have to start incorporating much more complex software. You have to start using tools like artificial intelligence, machine learning. And one thing that's really nice about only being 9 years old is that we were built in the era of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So everything was built into our core. We've proven this at scale within retail. And you can see there's a lot of happy customers at Legion. Of these, there are some that are in distribution and manufacturing. So we have rolled out to Aritzia. We've started to do distribution at IKEA, Harbor Freight, Rite Aid. Unfortunately, it had some issues lately, but we have a few others that are using us in their DCs. So when we thought about how we wanted to expand our footprint and go into distribution, we asked ourselves, well, can we, right? So one of the things that we do really well is we reduce attrition and we reduce overtime. And we're very good at helping people with productivity and helping make sure that employees are happy. And so what we did is we sent out a survey, and we sent it to over 1,000 operators at different DCs, and we said, if you could make some changes to the way that you schedule your employees, what would you do? And this is what we got back, right? And so as we went down this list, we realized that not only we do this, we think we have a very unique offering and do this in a way that's very different than anything you may have seen before, okay? So let's talk about it. And I've shown this a few times, and somebody said it looks like a TIE fighter. It's a very complex slide. I promise I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. So remember when we at the beginning, I talked about the idea of efficiency, making it as efficient as possible versus employee needs, right? On the left side, we have that efficiency. We have companies like Connors that are really good at doing labor model, figuring out exactly what standards are needed, right? Helping us put together exactly what the labor demand is. Scheduling in distribution centers has been a challenge for many years. And you might ask yourself, well, why is that? You know, we can do it in other industries, but in DCs, it's been really, really, really difficult. I think it's because DCs change so much. They're they're very fluid. There's a lot of things that are changing. Keith mentioned it this morning. It's constantly innovating. So what I believe has happened is, like, if you look at most distribution centers, people said the tools that are available to them, they just said, let's forget about it. Let's create our own Excel spreadsheets. Let's put it off to the side and come up with our own processes, because they didn't have enough of the building blocks to create the ideal schedule that they wanted, right? So what we did is we said, well, do we have all the building blocks to enable them to replicate what they've done and take it an additional step? Again, on the left is the efficiency, building that optimal guidance. I went down that little diatribe because it's not just labor standards. You also might have things like, you have a crew that's based on a robot, right? You only can schedule so many people, and you need to make sure that those people are all there in order to be efficient. You might have an e-com operation that you want to flex and have a tiered type of situation based on the number of e-com orders that are coming in, and it needs to be very fluid because you're using temp labor. So that actually gets fairly complex, okay? So let's assume that we have the ideal labor demand for a second. On the right-hand side, we have people. People are people, right? They all want something different. Nobody wants to work the same hours every single week. They want to take their kids to school. There's all sorts of things that everybody wants to do. And so what Legion does is we take into consideration all of the wants of that employee. We ask them what their preferences are, when they like to work. If they like to work 4-10s, 5-8s, if they are on a rotational pattern, if they're shift bidding, how are they shift bidding? What are the ways that we can enable that? We also look at the positions and skills and certifications and ensure that whenever we put them into a slot, they have the appropriate skills. And we try to help them with performance and productivity know whether or not they are able to earn additional badges. So we have the ability to, let's say that Nate comes and he picks up additional shifts. I might give him a badge just because he picked up 10 shifts last week, or that would be ridiculous, in the last quarter, okay? But one thing that's really interesting about productivity, and this is where I think we do something different than what you may have heard before, is we can actually track an individual's productivity at the role level. So we can measure whether or not a person is 90% effective at a role, 95% effective, et cetera. And whenever we show you the schedule, we can represent that schedule, and we can show you we've fulfilled all labor policies, union agreements, et cetera. But based on the people you have scheduled, you're most likely not going to hit your goal. Remember how earlier I said one of the things that we do very well is reduce overtime? That's key, right? Knowing that you are going to have to work people overtime gives you an opportunity to make decisions. And the nice thing about Legion is labor management tools are all about in the day. We can do this a week, 2 weeks out, assuming the forecast information is good.
Yeah, and I think to Scott's point, as you think about the power that's required for solutions to be able to do this and the data that is available, we've hit this progression where you start to look across transportation and you have insights into when those appointments are and what the on-time percentage of that specific carrier might be. And so you start to layer in all of this information. You heard Anaplan earlier today as they start to think about a demand and replenishment schedule. You can get more accurate as you get closer to that day that you're actually executing by understanding what does our transportation look like, what does our outbound order volumes look like, and bringing all that information together and then presenting it to the end user in a way that allows me to know when I get to work today, I need to go get a reach truck, put on a freezer suit, because we know who those people are that are qualified to be in those areas, and we've been able to schedule them optimally ahead of time and really make it easier for them to know, well, what time am I going to be able to go home tonight? Are we expecting overtime? So there's a quality of life addition to this as well from an end user perspective, and having that knowledge of where they're going to be working and how long that we think we're going to need them for.
That's right. It's all about ease of use. Remember our mission statement, turning hourly jobs into good jobs? That is predicated on the idea that everything needs to be easy to use, simple. Below the surface, there's all sorts of things happening, right? But for that end user, everything's presented in a very easy to understand form. So again, efficiency on one side, employee needs on the other. Now we have labor, unions, policies, all of the things that we can't do anything about that constrain the schedule. When we put all of those together and create a schedule, that's what at Legion we call the perfect schedule. And it's only when you have all of those things together that you're able to create that perfect schedule. And then as soon as you start working that schedule, everything blows up and you have to change it anyway. But getting it right up front gives you the ability to change it more effectively in the moment, okay? Again, turning hourly jobs into good jobs. I'm trying to go forward. Boop.
You guys want to progress us?
Yeah,
One,
just
maybe.
can heat. So when turning hourly jobs into good jobs, we also, it's all about employee engagement, right? I talked about that at the beginning. We have a mobile app. Our mobile app has a 4.9 score on both the iOS and Android stores. We have almost a 90% adoption rate of that mobile app. We're very proud of the fact that once we get information from employees and understand when they want to work, how they want to work, we have a 96% match rate to their needs. You might say, okay, well, I've got shift patterns, I'm on a rotation, these guys are set. Yeah, but you're missing out on the opportunity potentially to bring in a temp agency and have people fill in slots that's much more efficient than working the entire crew overtime, right? And being able to do that and understand that I can bring this person in and they actually want to be there, and I can track their efficiency and productivity at the same time is a really powerful concept. On this mobile app, we can look at the schedule. We have full-time and attendance. We can integrate with another solution. At the end of the day, a schedule is nothing more than a very specific form of communication. We also have a full comms package built in, and we have instant pay set up on there. Instant pay is wonderful. You can pay somebody as soon as their shift is over. But more importantly, we're introducing the concept that if I want somebody to come in and I know that it's going to cost me a lot by having to work the team over in overtime, I could offer a premium or tie incentives to certain shifts that as soon as they work that shift, that incentive goes into their pocket, right? So it's just a game changer and the ability to very, very quickly react.
Yeah, I'll add too, from a supervisor perspective, you heard Jordan talk about tasks and the value and aligning that with end goals. From a supervisor's perspective, this eases a lot of that burden that they have every day as well, trying to figure out who actually showed up today, how am I performing against what we actually scheduled that's out there. So supervisors are asked to do a lot in the warehouse. It's another way to be able to ease some of that burden from them and really make their day a lot easier.
Absolutely. So the proof, right, is what is the ROI? Like how have we done this before? What do we think it would be? And if we could progress one more slide, I can show you that. We actually worked with Forrester a while back, and Forrester looked at us in comparison with 4 other workforce management tools out there. Happy to share the study with everybody. And what they saw is that we actually have a 13x ROI. And in comparison to other workforce management tools, I'll ruin the surprise. It's very, very impressive, right? And if all we did was do better labor optimization, we wouldn't hit that. If all we did was have a better employee experience, we wouldn't have that. It's the combination of all of those things that bring this together and make this happen, right? And so you can see that when we talk about managers, Jay, you talked about your managers like just having all sorts of things to do, right? You talked about we don't want to look at dashboards, right? You guys talked about that. Being able to stop somebody from having to worry about call-offs and shift offers and shift swaps and constantly having to check the schedule is a huge deal for the efficiency of the DC and also the sanity of the leadership within the DC. So we think of that as manager productivity. Schedule optimization, it involves overtime reduction, but it also involves things like understanding when we want to offer voluntary time off, when we need to change the schedule midweek, and we need to do the appropriate incentives and optimize it in the right way. Artificial intelligence can actually offer recommendations, and that artificial intelligence is actionable directly from the specific agent that sits within our schedule. And last but not least, very important, is a reduction in attrition. One customer saw a 22% reduction in attrition, which I think is impressive. Hopefully you do too. But ultimately, it resulted in that 13x ROI. That's what I got. Did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that as you look at it holistically, we've heard about a lot of different technologies today, and I think this is a way to be able to bring some of that together within a warehouse. As you start thinking about all the work that's done to be able to optimize processes and task management within the WMS, to be able to manage people performance within a labor management solution, and then to be able to feed those metrics into a solution like this that actually allows us to be able to go in and say, here's the right person for that job on that day, and here's when we're going to be done, and here's where we might want to call in some additional people because we don't think that we're going to get the head count that we need. So you get to be much more proactive in your decision making and get a level of engagement with associates that they really do appreciate.
Yeah, and that reminds me of one more thing. So there's a lot of people that I've heard in here that are from 3PLs, right? And we've talked a lot about 3PLs. One of the things that we do on our schedule that I also think is different, we can actually sort our schedule based on the customers that we are servicing out of a 3PL and tie KPIs directly onto the schedule so you can see how you're reacting in real time against the goals that you have, right? And I think while dashboards are not, you don't want to look at them all the time, it is nice to just double check that you're in the right place, and if you're planning, making sure that that plan actually hits all of your needs. Thank you guys. Are there any questions before we wrap? There was one question last time, so I thought maybe there was a trend happening, and we were gonna all of a sudden have 2 questions this time. None? Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. See you on the boat.